As of today, we own this house. Everyone else, please leave, said the unexpected relatives who arrived. It was only a few days after Jack died. 10 of them appeared out of nowhere at our house and claimed it as their own. I couldn't help laughing. They knew nothing. They stared at me with suspicion and demanded an explanation. Don quote, "You realize this house is already mine?" I told them about the wish Jack had left for me. They were shocked when they heard this. Their faces turned pale. "I'm Lauren Alexis, 55, and I work in a restaurant's kitchen." "Lauren, are you available to work overtime today?" my manager asked. I replied, "No, I've already told you I can't." "That's correct. Your husband is still at the hospital. We should have asked someone else to cover for you." "I am sorry, Lauren. You can get home on time without any issues. I work in a popular Italian restaurant in town. People enjoy it because the food is inexpensive and delicious. As a result, we are constantly on the go. I used to be fine with working extra hours, but now that my husband Jack is suffering from severe cancer and is in the hospital, I'm leaving work on time. Jack is 3 years older than me, and we have been married for 32 years. This is his first serious illness. The cancer was discovered during a routine checkup, but it had already spread to other parts of his body, and his strength quickly dwindled after we learned the news. It is unfortunate. Staying at home and working remotely exacerbated his health decline. He used to work as a freelance interior designer, working entirely from his computer. Thanks to him, I didn't have to worry about housework and could concentrate on my work. But when he got sick, I had to change my work schedule. I now start early in the morning and leave before the restaurant becomes crowded. I want to spend as much time as possible caring for him. I frequently apologize to my coworkers for causing them trouble. "What exactly are you talking about? Do not be so down." They'd say it's going to worry your husband. Simply stay positive and take good care of him. Do not worry. The manager will handle everything if necessary. We're here to help. When I asked, my colleagues would joke and try to cheer me up. Everyone agreed without complaint. In fact, they suggested that I leave early. The manager was concerned about my financial situation, so he changed the shifts to accommodate my current work schedule. I consider myself fortunate to work in such a wonderful environment, and I intend to repay their generosity once things settle down. With this in mind, I thank my coworkers and sign the attendance sheet. I quickly gathered my belongings and hurried to the hospital. "You must be Mrs. Alexis. The doctor has just arrived and is speaking with your husband." When I entered the hospital, a nurse greeted me warmly. Hearing that, I dashed to Jack's room. As I entered, I noticed Jack conversing with the doctor. "Your wife is here. The doctor stated that you are finished with work. Thank you for everything." Jack replied with a weak smile. Jack is older than me. He used to have a youthful appearance, and people frequently assumed I was older. But since the cancer diagnosis, he appears to have aged dramatically. His once bright face is now thin and pale with a faint smile. When he first got sick, he told me, "I will not let this illness beat me." But his body is weakening by the day. No matter how hard he tries to remain strong. "I was simply explaining your husband's condition," the doctor began, but Jack interrupted. "Let me tell our doctor." An uneasy feeling crept over me, and I could tell the doctor felt the same way as he nodded quietly. The doctor has left the room. "Hello, Lauren. How long have we been married?" Jack inquired, looking out the window. Worried about him? I responded carefully. 32nd years. 32nd years felt long, but looking back, they went by so quickly. "Stop," I said, concerned about where the conversation was going. "It sounds like you're saying it's almost done. Perhaps another 7 months, Jack muttered, lost in thought. His words sounded like he'd accepted the end, and I tried to stop him from speaking like that. But he avoided my gaze and continued. Just hang in there for another 7 months. It might happen even sooner. I understand my body better than anyone else." He smiled faintly while looking down. Hearing those words confirmed my worst fears, and I couldn't hold back the tears. "I apologize for making you sad. I promised when we married that I would never make you cry." Jack spoke softly. He saw my tears, smiled sadly, and gently wiped them away. Tears welled up in his eyes, and seeing this made me cry even more. I could only say this in a trembling voice. "I'll need to apologize to your parents when I arrive. I will sincerely apologize for making their daughter sad. Stop, I told him. Once he is gone, I will be alone for the rest of my life. We used to laugh and talk about our time together until the end. But when Jack began talking as if he had given up, I couldn't contain my rage. Don't talk as if it's over. Do not say such sad things, I begged Lauren. Nothing has been decided yet. Medical science advances on a daily basis. And if we look at other hospitals, there may still be options. I insisted on dying, Lauren, Jack said calmly. I screamed, unable to accept the truth, but he gently took my hand and spoke softly. I will leave this world soon. No, I despise that idea, I responded, my heart aching. Before I leave, I want to accomplish everything I've always wanted to do. I want to spend every moment I have left with you, Jack said, smiling weakly. He began discussing his plans for the days ahead. I do not want to spend the rest of my time in the hospital. I'd like to go home with you. Lauren, I understand you're busy at work, but could you take a few days off? I want to go on the trip we had planned. I want to fulfill all of your wishes. So please, Jack said, looking at me tiredly. Seeing him like this, I painfully realized this was more than just a dream. It was real, and I needed to accept it. There was no more hope. With heavy hearts, I chose to respect his wishes. I fought back tears and told his doctor exactly what he wanted. The doctor understood and quickly scheduled his discharge. They ran some tests to ensure that it was safe, and Jack was released from the hospital the next day. From there, Jack spent his final days at home. Jack. When I arrived to visit, a familiar voice called out, "Hello, how are you feeling? Are you ready to go to the other world yet? Just kidding." It was Paul, Jack's brother. "Lauren, you've arrived as well." I assumed it was only Jack. Paul replied, surprised. We had time before dinner. I stayed in the room as long as I could to be with Jack, but then his mother, Paul, and Paul's wife, Lily, arrived for a visit. "It has been a while, Paul," I said, trying to remain calm. Jack, S brother Paul, is 58 years old and works in construction, but he frequently misses work and does not have a good job for his age. He simply drifts through life day by day. His wife, Lily, is 36 and stunning, but she wears a stern expression and speaks harshly. She has a controlling attitude that stands out when compared to how she interacts with others. Jack's mother is 82, but she appears much younger and full of energy. However, her greed is visible on her face. She adores Paul to an unusual degree and always looks down upon Jack. I just can't stand Jack's family. Paul is constantly making rude jokes, and I'm sure Lily despises me. She has treated me as an enemy since we first met and never misses an opportunity to make a comment. My mother-in-law does not treat us as people. She is constantly bothering us. Jack is not a son. He's only a source of income. From the moment we meet, she begins to request financial assistance. Paul has a large family, doesn't he? You two don't have children and both work, so you must have some extra cash. Could you help out a little? These requests for money have become commonplace. Paul's family consists of 10 members, including his mother. After his first wife left, he remarried despite already having 4 children. He and Lily now have 2 more children together, bringing the total to 6. Their finances are tight, and they are constantly asking us for money. What's with everyone here? I thought, isn't it cold to treat your own mother this way? Jack, take good care of her. She's been so lonely since her father died. Paul claimed their mother's strange behavior began after her husband died. He'd been strict but sensible. When he was alive, the family got along great. However, after his death, she appeared to have changed completely. Jack's father used to encourage her to be kind to us. But now that he's gone, she doesn't feel obligated to accept me. She only talks about money when she's with Jack. Previously, Paul had run off with another woman and been disowned by his father. However, after Jack's father died, Paul returned home with his new wife, Lily, and the discernment was lifted. This town provides good support for families, but raising 6 children still costs a lot of money, and they are constantly struggling. Jack was always astounded by their unrealistic expectations. This month has been particularly difficult for us financially. Can you help us? Paul inquired. What? No, please stop. Jack is already going through a lot. How can you ask for more? I yelled, upset. Please stay out of this. This is a family matter. Paul responded calmly. That's right, Lily said, smirking. I'm furious at their unreasonable behavior. I couldn't help but yell again, but Paul ignored it, and Lily laughed beside him, waving her hand as if she was shooing away a dog. We're sorry, but we can't give you any money, I replied firmly. Oh, this is a problem. I assumed you'd figure something out. That's why we came all this way, Paul said with a shrug. What a useless son. My mother-in-law grumbled under her breath, as if Jack had let her down yet again. I was at my limit with how unreasonable those three were acting. So what is the situation? How is his cancer progressing, and when will he be discharged? His mother inquired, but it was clear she did not care. Given her greedy tendencies, she probably had a selfish plan. The doctors estimate he has about 7 months to live. He'll be discharged tomorrow so he can spend his final days at home. I responded, Is this so? When they heard those words, their eyes lit up. Instead of shock or sadness, their expressions were filled with joy, making me sick to my stomach. We'll come by with a car to pick him up once he's discharged. He can't walk home, correct? Paul joined in. There's no need for that, Jack said calmly, but his mother and the others continued to talk excitedly. I could not take it anymore. Their behavior was unbearable, so I kicked them out of the room. What are you doing now? They yelled. Please leave. I'll handle the discharge myself. Your help is not required. And honestly, I do not want to see any of you again. As they argued, I quickly shut the door in their faces and locked it. Then I immediately informed the hospital staff that no one but me could visit Jack. I did not want his family anywhere near him. I apologize, Lauren. I've caused you a lot of trouble, Jack said softly. Why don't you stand up to them? I inquired, my frustration increasing. They treat you horribly and exploit you. Why should people like them have no worries while you suffer? I was angry, and although it made no sense, I felt compelled to lash out at someone. I loved Jack so much that the thought of losing him was unbearable. I did not want to confront them and make matters worse. So, I'm glad you spoke up, Jack said, adding with a serious expression on his face, Lauren, I have one request for you. A request? I asked, surprised. Jack looked at me gravely and said, Please. This is my first and final request. I promise to follow through on it. Following that, he entrusted me with something important. It was very unexpected, but I could tell he was serious. I took the item home that night, the following day, before his family arrived. I quickly assisted Jack in his discharge from the hospital. We got home, but I couldn't shake the fear that his family would arrive soon. Determined to protect Jack from them, I decided to alter his plans slightly. Instead, we stayed at home. I asked a friend if we could stay in their villa for a while. It was hard to leave our house, but as long as Jack was with me, anywhere felt like home. When I told Jack that, he smiled shyly, and I couldn't help blushing. After explaining the situation at work, I took an extended leave of absence. My only wish was to remain by Jack's side until the end, with the help of friends. Jack spent his final days peacefully. 8 months later, he died quietly at his funeral. I saw my in-laws for the first time in a while. I expected them to say something, but instead they just looked at me with a smug smile. It gave me a strange sensation, like a chill down my spine. I was curious what they were up to, but I would soon find out. After the funeral, I was sorting through Jack's belongings at home when the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there stood my mother-in-law and Paul, each carrying several bags. We've finally found you, The neighbors informed us that you had returned. My mother-in-law asked, What are those bags for? I asked, as she attempted to push her way inside. I blocked the doorway and refused to let them in, complaining the entire time. Paul stared at me, annoyed. Stop getting in the way. Move aside, he ordered. I will not move. What's inside those bags, and did you bring your children? What are your thoughts? I commented, noticing Paul's entire family was with him. The situation was confusing, but I knew that panicking would only give them an advantage. They clearly had a plan, and I was not going to let them walk all over me. I stood firm and laughed mockingly. My mother-in-law said something shocking today. This is our house. You should leave. I was stunned. My in-laws, all 10 of them, had come up with the bold idea of taking over our house. Their audacity had me speechless for a moment. My son's possessions naturally belong to his blood family, don't they? He left us a will, my mother-in-law said, waving a piece of paper at me with a smile dot. Hearing this, I couldn't stop laughing. The absurdity of their actions was overwhelming. What's so funny? My reaction appeared to irritate them. Lily peeked out from behind me, Paul glaring at me as I wiped away tears. I'm still laughing at the absurdity of my situation. They are angry, looked and revealed a shocking truth. Don't you realize this house is already mine? What? My mother-in-law gasped. What do you mean? Paul concurred, both of them looking completely perplexed. Their stunned expressions made me laugh again, but I quickly gathered myself and went to retrieve some important documents from another room. I returned with more surprising news. As you can see, I am now the official owner of this house. Jack transferred ownership to me while he was still alive, I explained. What exactly are you talking about? My mother-in-law exclaimed, her eyes wide in disbelief. She took the documents from my hands and studied them closely with Paul. It is true. The house is in her name, they murmured in shock. The document was official and proved that the house belonged to me. Paul and Lily immediately started protesting. How could Jack no longer own the house? They yelled. I remained calm and replied. He decided to transfer the house to me before leaving the hospital. He believed that putting the house in my name would be beneficial in the long run. At this point, my mother-in-law intervened, holding up her own copy of what she claimed was Jack's. Well, this cannot be. He wrote, "Look, here's a wheel." She claimed the paper she showed was in Jack's handwriting, but it lacked official seals and signatures. It was not a valid legal document, and they clearly did not understand it. Their lack of knowledge made me sigh with frustration. No matter how much I explained, I knew they'd never accept the truth. Expecting things to escalate, I asked them to wait a moment and called a lawyer. I appreciate your assistance. I'm sorry, but Jack's family is here for a supposed... Well, could you come over soon? Thank you. I spoke into the phone. Paul looked at me suspiciously. Who are you calling? I didn't give him any details, but I did invite them in. I seated my mother-in-law and Paul in the living room and told the children to play in the bedroom. When the doorbell rang, I went to greet the person I'd called. I led him into the living room. I'm sorry for the delay, I said as the suit-clad man entered the room. Paul and the others became tense, looking at him suspiciously. This is Mr. David, the lawyer who has been assisting us with Jack's case. I explained upon hearing the word lawyer. My mother-in-law's face was filled with shock. An attorney. She exclaimed, realizing that the situation had become more serious than she had anticipated. I met David through a friend of the owner of the villa we rented. He had already been informed of the situation, despite being only 32 years old, which made Jack and me nervous at first. He was well known among his friends for being intelligent and particularly adept at resolving family disputes. After meeting him in person, we completely trusted him. Jack and I had told David everything about the inheritance and family issues, so we officially hired him as our lawyer. My in-laws had no idea Jack had hired a lawyer, and they were completely surprised. Paul and the others were stunned and unable to respond. Let me reintroduce myself. I am David, and I am here at Jack's request. I will record this conversation for legal reasons. David stated that, unlike Paul, who dressed in flashy clothes, he had a simple appearance, with short black hair and plain clean glasses. My mother-in-law appeared to forget why she had come. She was caught off guard by David's calm presence, so he greeted them politely, and they quickly accepted his business card without hesitation. When they saw his card and a lawyer badge, my mother-in-law straightened up. Paul and Lily both appeared tense as they realized he was a real lawyer. David and I sat on the sofa across from my in-laws, eager to start the conversation. David smoothly turned on the voice recorder, and the discussion began. May I have a look at the wall you brought? David asked in a calm voice. My mother-in-law's hand trembled slightly as she handed it over. She appeared nervous, probably worried that without a lawyer on her side, things would not go as planned. It is difficult to twist words when dealing with an experienced lawyer, and she appeared to be aware of this. David carefully read the wall, then looked at me and nodded. Thank you. I'll return this to you right now, he said, returning a small amount to my mother-in-law with a polite smile. His calm demeanor seemed to make her more anxious. Was that actually Jack's will? She asked. Her voice was filled with doubt. Yes, it appears to be Jack's will, as David confirmed. See, with this, the house is ours, she declared confidently, but David quickly corrected her. But will is an older version, he added, gently lowering her expectations. What do you mean? My mother-in-law exclaimed with surprise. It appears you didn't catch that, David said calmly. Yes, the will you presented was Jack S. However, it is outdated. Is this the most recent and officially valid will? He then took out a newer document from his bag. This one was more recent than the one my mother-in-law had, and it clearly stated that I would leave all of my assets to Lauren. The previous letter I wrote for my mother is hereby revoked, and this document will serve as my official correspondence. What? Allow me to see that. Lily took the will from David and checked it herself. The new one contained a more recent date, a seal and even Jack's fingerprint, as well as a note confirming that it was created under the supervision of a lawyer. It was clear which was valid. As Lily and Paul read it, their faces became pale. My mother-in-law's lips quivered with shock. So, what does this imply for the other? Well, Paul inquired. Frustration builds. Unfortunately, David explained, your mother's will is now a useless piece of paper. At that point, Paul erupted in rage, ignoring the lawyer's presence. He turned on his mother and yelled, "You told me that you would get the entire inheritance." His voice was so powerful that it appeared he might lash out physically. Lily tried to calm him down, but he was too strong, pushing her away as he continued to yell at his mother. My mother-in-law cowered under Paul's rage. The scene becomes chaotic. As this unfolded, I spoke firmly. Please do not cause a disturbance in someone else's home. It's extremely bothersome. What have you said? Paul snapped back, glaring at me. If you continue, David will confirm everything and may take legal action if necessary, I added calmly. Hearing David's name seemed to restore Paul's senses. He realized he was dealing with a lawyer, and no amount of resistance would be effective. He returned to the sofa, nervously sitting down. I turned to my mother-in-law and asked, "Did Jack really write this will himself?" She hesitated for a moment before responding. "Yes, he wrote it for me while he was hospitalized." Her voice was full of irritation. Was Jack pleased to write it? I pressed on. My mother-in-law nodded in agreement, clearly tired of being questioned. I caught David's gaze and gave him a signal. He adjusted his glasses and nodded, approving of what I was about to reveal to my in-laws. That quote is an interesting story, I started, but it seems a little off. Actually, the hospital's security cameras caught you forcing Jack to write that. Well? As I spoke, I took out my laptop, inserted the USB drive provided by the hospital, and began playing the footage. Jack told David that he was being pressured to write the will, so we notified the hospital. They cooperated and handed over the security footage. I quickly opened the video on my screen. In the video, my mother-in-law can be heard saying in a threatening tone, "We'll be in trouble if you die and the inheritance does not go through." The footage clearly showed her pressuring Jack, with Paul and Lily also present. "If you do not want anything bad to happen to your wife, simply sign quietly," Paul was heard saying. Lily added, "Jack, just sign this and nothing will happen to her, so don't worry." This video was taken 5 days before Jack left the hospital, as they questioned him about his cancer to ensure they received the inheritance. No, it was not like that. It was simply a joke that went too far. My mother-in-law stammered. I watched a drama before going to the hospital, and the villain looked so cool. I simply copied it without thinking. I did not mean it. Seriously, please forgive us. When the situation turned against them, they quickly made excuses. Their words only fueled my rage, and I sighed at how pathetic they appeared. If you had simply admitted it, things might have been different. However, attempting to hide it reveals your true intent. I sternly asked David, "Can we file extortion charges based on this?" "Absolutely," David said, smiling as he picked up the voice recorder. "Their statements provide sufficient evidence. When Paul and Lily realized they had forgotten about the voice recorder, they were shocked. "That means we'll be filing for damages against all of you, including compensation for the victim," David said. "This cannot be true." "Wait a minute, Lauren," Lily pleaded. "Only Mom made him sign. We were just watching. We did not force him to sign anything," desperate to avoid responsibility. Lily attempted to distance herself, resulting in a heated argument between them. Paul and their mother. "Wasn't it you two who offered to help with the writing on the wall?" My mother-in-law snapped, attempting to shift the blame back onto them. "You said you'd handle it properly, Mom. "We were only watching," Paul snapped. "You were the ones who pushed Jack to write it quickly," his mother argued. "That was because Jack had an upcoming medical appointment. It was not about rushing the well. We just didn't have enough time, and we thought it should be done before Lauren arrived." As Lily continued to speak, it appeared that they were attempting to accelerate their plan while I was not present. She didn't appear to understand the significance of what she was admitting. The argument became so loud and intense that I almost wanted to cover my ears. Meanwhile, the children playing nearby heard the noise and gathered around. One of them was a 2-year-old child, and their eyes were filled with concern. The children were not at fault, so I quickly summoned my eldest nephew, a 5th grader, and led them to another room so they would not have to witness the adults fighting. He didn't quite understand what was going on, but he took his younger siblings to the other room as I requested. I calmly turned to the 3 adults after the children had left. "Isn't this shameful? What kind of parent are you?" I asked. "What are you talking about?" Paul asked defensively. "Ignoring your own responsibilities and blaming each other in front of the kids. Don quote, "Do you find that pathetic? You're just trying to avoid responsibility." Hearing my words, Lily realized the children had been present, and her face softened in regret. "I am truly sorry. I admit everything. Not just threats. Please forgive us." Paul and his mother quickly followed suit, apologizing alongside Lily in a desperate attempt to gain her forgiveness. "Please help us financially so that we can care for our children. I am not sure how we will survive if we are charged with damages. We're done for. Please overlook this. If we have sinned, we will atone for it." They pleaded, cried, and begged, but their words only irritated me. In the end, all you care about is yourself and money. I do not feel any genuine regret from you. That's not it, Paul said. "We quote read just in a tight spot, and we wanted you to understand. Do you know how your excuses sound?" I inquired sharply, drawn by my words. Paul fell silent, and his mother and Lily appeared equally guilty, with no further opportunity to apologize. I let the conversation end there. I spoke even harsher to them. "I do not intend to forgive you. If you truly care for your children, you should work harder to repay your debts. Everything that happened is a result of what you did to Jack. It's entirely your fault. Why should I forgive you? It is unreasonable." They were speechless, unable to defend themselves. "If you understand, please leave. This home means a lot to me, and I don't intend to live with you. Lauren, please forgive us. We were wrong. Please help us." They begged, but I flatly refused. "If you say another word, I'll call the cops." When they realized I was serious, they panicked. They quickly gathered their children and belongings before leaving the house. David and I watched them leave without saying a word, and as soon as they were gone, we locked the door and sighed with relief. The matter was finally resolved. After that, I asked David to start the process of claiming damages. He had everything prepared, and the process went smoothly. The 3 of them were charged with $50,000 in damages for forcing Jack to sign the will, despite their inability to pay such a large sum. They tried to negotiate a settlement, but I refused to budge. I insisted on full payment because I refused to compromise. Their lives changed dramatically. My mother-in-law had to care for 6 children on her own, while Paul and Lily were forced to work hard every day. They sold their house and moved into a cramped apartment, all 10 of them, while still paying for the damages. Their lives will not become easier anytime soon, and they will continue to struggle until their youngest child reaches adulthood. Finally, I was able to completely cut ties with them. After sorting through Jack's belongings, I returned to our home and resumed my daily tasks. Friends from work occasionally pay me a visit so that I do not feel lonely. Every day, I stand in front of Jack's portrait and tell him about the events of the day. This was the final promise I made to him. Even if I become ill and end up in a hospital, I will never abandon this daily ritual. As Jack neared the end of his life, he made one final request: that I continue to talk to him every day. I adore your voice and our conversations more than anything. I hope you will continue to talk to me every day so that your voice can reach me even from heaven. He had stated that after he died, I made a solemn vow to keep that promise until the day I joined him. I will keep our bond strong by talking to him every day.